Hey everyone, today we're diving into the world of governance, risk, and compliance. GRC. We're going to lay out a practical roadmap for building a GRC program that, get this, isn't just a cost center, but a real strategic advantage for your business.
So let's kick things off with a number that should get your attention: $14.8 million. Yeah. According to the Poneman Institute, that's the average price tag for a business that fails to comply with regulations. The stakes are incredibly high, and honestly, that number is only heading in one direction.
And this is exactly why we need a major mindset shift. GRC isn't just about dodging fines anymore. It's about gaining a competitive edge. A truly modern program helps you make smarter decisions, builds deep trust with your customers, and, it just makes your entire organization way more resilient. Okay, so that's the big question, right? How do you actually build a program that delivers that kind of value? How do you go from just ticking boxes to actively fueling business growth? Well, that's the journey we're mapping out today. Here's a quick look at our plan. We'll start with what we're calling the modern GRC quest. Then we'll chart our course, set up the rules, manage risks across the board, build a strong culture, and finally talk about how to keep improving. All right, first up, the modern GRC quest. Before we start laying any bricks, we gotta understand the world we're living in, why this has become such an essential mission for any company that wants to thrive. Let's be real, the business environment out there is intense. You've got new SEC rules for cyber disclosures breathing down your neck. The EU's DORA regulation is completely changing the game for financial services. And get this, a whopping 70% of companies are dealing with security incidents caused by their third-party vendors. Pressure is coming from every angle, which means risk is too. So where on earth do you even start? This next part is all about assessment and scoping. Just think of it like this. You've got to understand the terrain and draw your map before you take a single step. A good GRC program is absolutely not a one-size-fits-all deal. You have to start by really digging into what makes your organization tick. That means lining up with business goals, knowing your legal duties, looking at your current policies, and really mapping out all the potential risks. And maybe most importantly, you have to get your key stakeholders involved from day one. A huge part of that assessment is using something called a GRC maturity model. It sounds fancy, but it's really just a framework to figure out where you are on the map. Are you at the initial stage, where everything's kind of chaotic and ad hoc? Or are you all the way at optimized, where things are integrated and automated? You can't plan your route if you don't know your starting point. And once you know where you stand, you can start to define your scope. A classic mistake people make is trying to do everything at once, trying to boil the ocean. The smart move is to start with a few core areas, like the ones here. Maybe tackle regulatory compliance and cyber risk first, and then you can grow the program from there. Okay, map in hand, it's time to build the chassis of your GRC program. This is all about governance and rules, basically figuring out who's responsible for what and writing the official rulebook for the company. And this is where a beautifully simple tool like a RACI matrix comes into play. It just cuts through all the confusion. It clearly lays out who is responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who just needs to be informed for all those key GRC tasks. No more finger pointing. Now let's talk policies. The most important thing to remember here is that these can't be dusty binders on a shelf. They have to be your organization's living, breathing frontline defense. They're the tools you use every day to guide decisions and shut down risk. And a really solid policy framework needs to cover all the bases you see here. We're talking everything from data privacy and how you respond to an incident, to managing third-party risk, and of course, a super clear code of conduct. Altogether, these things create the rulebook for operating safely and ethically. All right, now we're getting to the absolute heart of GRC, the ongoing work of managing risk. This is all about the cycle of finding, assessing, fixing, and then constantly monitoring for risks all across the business. So you've found a risk. What now? Well, you've got four main options. You can mitigate it by putting in new controls, you can accept it if it's small enough, you can transfer it, think insurance, or you can just avoid the risky thing altogether. As you can see, mitigation is usually the most common play because it's about actively tackling the problem. Now, monitoring is key, and to do it right, you have to know the difference between KRIs and KPIs. I love this analogy. Key risk indicators, or KRIs, are like your car's headlights. They're predictive. They help you see what's coming up ahead. KPIs, key performance indicators, they're more like your rearview mirror. They tell you how you've performed in the past. To drive safely, you absolutely need both. Here's the thing though, you can have the best processes and tools in the world, but your GRC program is only as good as your people. That's why the next step is so critical, building a resilient culture. This is about embedding risk awareness right into the company's DNA. And when it comes to training, one size fits all just doesn't work. You need a tiered strategy. So everybody in the company gets the basics, but your folks in high-risk jobs like engineering or finance, they get much more specific deep dive training. And it has to be a continuous thing, part of onboarding with refreshers every single year. And that brings us to the final piece of our roadmap: evolve and continuously improve. But here's the secret: it's not actually a final step. The whole point is that it's a loop. A great GRC program is a living, breathing thing that's always learning and adapting. And this improvement doesn't just happen on its own. You have to build it into the rhythm of the business. You got quarterly check-ins on your metrics, you're constantly getting feedback from your teams, and you have that big annual review with leadership to plan for the future. That cadence is what keeps the program sharp and relevant. And this is the prize. When you put all these pieces together, GRC stops being this heavy, bureaucratic thing you have to deal with. Instead, it becomes a business accelerator. It powers growth, builds trust, and gives you a powerful edge over the competition. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Right now, is your GRC program a business accelerator, or is it a bureaucratic burden? The answer to that question tells you everything you need to know about whether you're building a real strategic advantage.